Today I'm going to show you the individual plants that are flowering here at the beginning of November. We'll begin with yellow and roll around the color wheel. We're looking at a cloudless sulphur butterfly that is hovering over a cassia plant. Cassia is a food plant for the cloudless sulphurs, so the females hover around it in fall to lay their eggs. These large yellow blossoms appear in fall, and the female likes to lay her eggs on the flower blossoms. Why? The caterpillars eat the flower blossoms, turn the same color as the flowers, and then blend in with them. Camouflage. I've been planting more Damianita daisy, and much of it is just a year or two old and still quite small. A few months back, I discovered that Damianita daisies, which are a part of the sunflower family, are a host food plant for the Dainty Sulphur butterfly. This is a California coast sunflower. It attracts flies, honeybees, and an occasional wasp. If I cut it back after its springtime bloom is over, it will produce a second bloom in fall, which, by the way, is what happens with many of the plants that flower in November. This is Sundrops, and it has a reliably long bloom season. I rarely see pollinators on it, except sometimes bumblebees on early mornings in midsummer, and as here, honeybees in November when other things are not in bloom. This is Tacoma Sierra apricot with golden tubular flowers. This is more compact than Tacoma crimson flare, seen later, but both seem to have equally long bloom periods. These peach-colored flowers are the most common type of desert globemallow. It was 6 feet tall in June, but overgrown with dead stalks, so I cut it back to 1 foot off the ground. Now it is grown back, very small, but neat and tidy, with a second flush of peach-colored blossoms. When in bloom, it is always popular with honeybees and other bees. This tubular orange blossom is Mexican honeysuckle. In a previous video, I said that it seemed to bloom all year long. Well, it's not quite that good. This past summer, I noticed it taking a break in the heat of August and September, but it does bloom several times a year and for very long periods of time. This deep orange, almost red tubular blossom is Tacoma crimson flare. This begins flowering in spring. It was still in blossom in August, and as you can see, it likewise flowers in November. At the far back of our lot is this long hedgerow of Cape honeysuckle from South Africa. It produces these tall, showy clusters of bright orange to red, trumpet-shaped flowers. Of course, the honeybees are attracted to it, and quite frequently, there are a multitude of hummingbirds around it. Occasionally, I succeed in capturing it on camera. This is Firecracker plant. With its mass of red tubular flowers, it has everything to make it a real hummingbird favorite. But unfortunately, the Firecracker plant is within 20 feet of the Cape honeysuckle, and the honeysuckle receives all the attention from the hummingbirds. I hope this changes as the Firecracker plant grows larger. Here is Salvia greggii, autumn sage. In my microclimate, it fares much better in dappled light than full sun. When I plant it in a hospitable spot, it will bloom from early spring nearly till December, if you remember to deadhead it periodically. The passion vine is blooming with crimson blossoms. Here is how the flowers bud and unfold. This leaf damage is not caused by the wasp I spotted there once. No, passion vine is a food plant for Gulf Fritillary caterpillars. Watch this female lay her eggs on a tendril. When the caterpillars appear, they are usually numerous and very easy to spot. This is Maine night sage, and its blossoms are pink and purple. The trick for this plant, as for many I've shown you so far, is after its blooms fade in spring, cut it back a fair amount. You'll get a flush of new flower blossoms throughout the fall. This with the distinctive purple flowers is Mexican bush sage Santa Barbara. A cloudless sulphur butterfly perches near it. The trick to spring and fall blossoming is the same for this plant. Cut it back fairly hard after spring blossoms are spent, and it will reward you with nearly as many blossoms in fall. This is Mexican Petunia. In my microclimate, only 20 miles from the Pacific Ocean, but with hot and dry summers, it does not like blazing sun but prefers dappled light. This photo is not very good, but it does capture a hummingbird feeding on it. Another of its big advantages is that it usually has a long bloom season. Rosemary is not a California native, but to me it's a noteworthy plant for two reasons. One, it has blue blossoms, which is actually quite rare. And two, it blossoms in late fall through much of winter. When so little else is flowering, the honeybees are really drawn to it. This is Blackfoot Daisy with its small but cheery white and gold flowers. It loves full sun, but it can take some shade and will bloom spring through fall if it has enough summer water. And lastly, this is Cape Plumbago from South Africa. Obviously, it's not a California native, but it is one of the food plants for the caterpillars of the marine blue butterfly, which is fairly rare around my neighborhood. I'm trying to attract more of them, and providing one of their host plants is one of the best ways. So that's all for now about my November walkabout in the garden. From Fullerton, California, this is Rob Briggs, wishing you continued pleasure and success in your garden as we approach the holiday season.